morning, good morning, good morning. It is Wednesday. Yes, Wednesday. So, today I'm going to talk about death. Death. Dun, dun, dun. And the reason why I'm talking about death is because so many people are afraid of it. And the thing is, it's not real. It's not a real thing. Death is not real. We do not die. But I just don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about how we hold ourselves back due to fear of death. The amount of stress we put on ourselves, the amount of pressure, the feeling of what is that feeling? I haven't had it in a long time, so that's what I'm trying to remember. Fear of not accomplishing things. Why would a truck do that? Like, it's just ridiculous. Did you see how close that? It's crazy. People playing around with big rigs. See, he's going to experience death. That thing that's not real. But really, death isn't real. What I was saying is, we prevent ourselves from exploring. We prevent ourselves from desiring things, especially because we believe our lives to be finite, and they're not finite at all. We believe that we have a certain time to live, and that's not true. And the thing is, when we have these beliefs of only having a certain amount of time, we don't feel that we have enough time to do the things that we really want to do. Like, for instance, I know a 30-something-year-old who doesn't feel it's necessary, or it's not necessary, but they don't feel it's worth going to school to learn something because they're too old. They're like, it's too late for them to enjoy, and that's really what it is. They feel it's not enough time to enjoy something. Like, if you go to school, you can get a degree, let's say 4 years. Let's say someone's 30 years old, and they don't want to get a degree, which only takes about, 4 years, because they feel they won't have enough time to enjoy whatever it is that they're going to school for, because they feel that their life is finite. And the thing is, the things that we learn here, we take with us into the spirit world. And that's what I mean, like, our life is not finite. We don't die. We may lose this body, but we have another one. We have a spirit body, and it looks almost identical to the one you have now. And depending on your soul condition, it will either look worse or better than your current body is now. So for those who can manage to, for instance, let's say someone has kind of like a dark soul. There's a lot of pain, there's a lot of anger, a lot of judgment, just a lot of pain within the soul, a lot of darkness. But they've managed to put beauty products on their face and all these age serums on their face, and they eat the right foods, meaning all the healthy, organic, natural, live foods. They give their body vitamins that it needs. They're doing all of these things to maintain the physical appearance, but in actuality, their spirit body could be so degraded. And that is possible because we're using our willpower to control the physical. But we have to understand that it's the non-physical part of ourselves, the soul, that dictates what our spirit body looks like and what our physical body looks like. But if we're doing things to counter the effects of the degraded soul, then there's no way to really know. How can you eat organic and eat organic food, but yet you're still judging everyone, you're still hating everyone, you're still condemning everyone? Your soul condition will dictate what your spirit body looks like. So we can use our willpower to make ourselves look beautiful. Just look at celebrities. Celebrities have a lot of money to do these willpower things to their body. So they're using their willpower to have all these treatments done, the Botox and the plastic surgery. They're doing all of these physical things to make their body look good. Meanwhile, they're suffering from Lyme disease. They're suffering from cancer. They're suffering from lupus. They're suffering from all kinds of diseases. You name it, they've got it. And you see it all the time, and they're the spokesperson, they're the spokesperson for cancer, they're the spokesperson for Lyme disease, and they're the spokesperson for lupus. But they look beautiful, but yet they're falling apart. And you can't run away from your soul. But my point is, there is no death. And whatever illness and sickness that they're encountering now, they will surely feel it and be shocked when they see themselves in the spirit world. Because we don't die. We go on. But anyway, back to the person who doesn't want to go to school or feels that it's not worth going to school because there's not enough time, they waited too long, blah, blah, blah. And these are all excuses. These are all excuses to support the darkness within their soul. So they'll say, oh, it's too late, but really it's not too late. But they're using it as an excuse because they feel like they're not worthy of having the things that a degree would yield. So what could it yield? A better job, if you don't have one, a better one if you do have one, a house maybe, a car. It just depends on what it is. So, the thing is, like, we prevent ourselves from doing things because we don't feel there's enough time. And we have all the time. Not only do we have all the time in the world, we have all the time in the spirit world. There are spirits who are 50,000 years old, 100,000 years old. Amen and amen. The people we know as Adam and Eve, they're still in the spirit world. They're still alive. They're just alive in their spirit body, not in their physical body. But it's the smallness that the smallness of our being, our consciousness, our awareness, that leads us down this path of believing things that aren't true. And death is not true. Is it true that people leave here? Yes, it is. But only, well, that's not even true because there's earthbound spirits who hang around here who won't go to the spirit world because they're afraid. And understand, only dark spirits hang around here. So there was this paranormal thing that a friend of mine shared on Facebook, and it was this spirit who was caught on one of those baby cams, little cameras, infrared cameras, and they saw the spirit walk by, and the spirit went and scratched the baby, and the spirit did this and that and the other. And if I'm sounding dismissive about it, or if I'm seeming dismissive about it, it's because I am. Because it's just nonsense. Like, people are so afraid of this stuff. Like, why be afraid of it? It's the fear that's causing the spirit to even be around you, to do the thing to do the things that it's able to do to the baby. Why do you think the baby is no victims here, but why do you think the baby is victim to this type of spirit? Because it's the soul condition that allows this spirit to come and do these things to that child. There's not enough love within that baby's soul to protect the child, because love is what protects you. Love is what keeps these bad spirits away. That's the power of love. But when the interview, I wish I can't put it on, maybe I can find it, but if I can find it, I'll incorporate it into this video. If it's not copyrighted, I'll have to check that out. Probably is. It's the news, so it's probably not. So, excuse me. When the parents were being interviewed, these dopey children, they were babies basically. These parents were babies themselves, but they were so degraded, they were so lost, they were just messed up. And I'm like, well, no wonder their baby's being attacked. Look who made the baby. Look who made the baby. Those who make babies create themselves. They're mini-me's. Not only is it a mini-me, it's worse. It's a mini-me times 2. Because it's the degradation of the dad, it's the degradation of the mom. And understand, a degraded soul will only mate with another degraded soul. You can't get a loving soul. A loving soul will look at you and be like, hell no, I'm not fucking with you. Seriously, that's... They wouldn't say it like that, but they would say, sorry, you don't love yourself. I deserve better than you. I deserve better than you. I'm loving myself, and I also want someone who's loving themselves. Seriously. So a degraded soul will only mate with another degraded soul, which means they got an extra degraded baby. And that's why the spirit was able to mess with this child. And then the mom was like, sometimes, I feel like someone's holding my throat. Oh, you damn Skippy, darling. They're holding your throat. They are holding your throat because that's the darkness within your soul. The darkness within your soul allows this spirit to come and do that to you. Just like the darkness in the baby soul allows the spirit to do whatever it was doing to it. It's so logical. It's so logical. And that's just one aspect of it. I mean, so anyway, we don't die. We keep going. There's so much to experience. There's more to experience in the love part than there is in the dark part. So the dark part, the lower part, which is the lower part of the first dimension, those areas are reserved. They are reserved. You got demons got reserved seating, baby. They are VIP. You're going here. There's a seat for you. There's an opening for you, and you got this place over here. And it's not a lot of room. Everyone's kind of bunched up. The lower you go, the darker it gets, the less room you have to roam and be free. Meaning, if you think about it, think about being in the hells like being at a concert, where you're just elbow to elbow, shoulder to shoulder, hip to hip. There's no room because there's no sense of freedom. All of that is taken away. All of it is taken away. The lower you go, the less room there is. It's dark. You can't see anything. It's very smelly. There's a lot of evil people down there to match your soul condition. Your soul condition matches their soul condition. Therefore, you are amongst others who are just like you. So you can't hurt and harm anybody anymore that has more love than you do. It's impossible. Impossible. It's impossible. And I don't say this to scare you. I think it's quite I think it's fitting. I think it's fitting because how else are you going to learn? So for all the souls who are in the spirit world, who are in the lower levels of the first dimension, they didn't learn their lesson while they were here on Earth. Clearly they didn't learn their lesson. So what has to happen? They need to learn their lesson there. Fix my camera. They need to learn their lesson there. And now they can learn it without any distraction. There's no addictions. You can't hang on to someone. What I mean by hang on to someone, there are many dark people on this planet, mean, evil, spiteful, vindictive people who love to hang around people who are loving. They love to do it. They love to be associated with those who are good because it ties in to their illusion, the lie that they're telling themselves. The lie that they tell themselves, there's nothing wrong with me, is sustained by hanging around someone who isn't as dark as they. And now they can say, well, he's my friend, he's loving, I must be loving too. People really do that stuff. And it gives them an opportunity to just like I said, fulfill that illusion that they're creating and sustaining their delusion, because they are delusional. But it happens. But, in the spirit world, you're separated unless you are earthbound. Unless you were earthbound. So the same people who would normally do things to you, see, on earth there are man's laws, and people are afraid of man's laws. People are afraid of being locked up in prison, and that's really the way it is. It's like being in prison. The only difference is you're in a jail cell here in a box. You may have a cellmate, you may not, depending on the situation. And it's just like that. The only difference is in the spirit world, it's almost like, what do they call it in jail? They call them pods. General population, where everyone's just together in one big room. They have that. That's how it is in the hells. You're just like that with everyone else. Just less room. Depending on the area. Like I said, there's a gradient thing going on with the hells. It's like the lower the darker, the higher the lighter. So as you as you increase your soul in love, you have a bit more freedom. It's a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And every time you increase yourself in love, you move up a notch and there's more freedom, there's more space. There's more freedom, there's more space. You do it again, there's more freedom, there's more space. And that's the goal, is to become more loving. Here and there, and gradually increase your love. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen overnight. But it takes time. And you can, well, let me take that back, because it can happen overnight. It would take you to realize a lot of things. It would take a lot of crying, meaning a lot of releasing of emotional injuries in order to release the pain and allow the love to come in. So it can happen overnight, but that's like, whoo! You if you can manage that, wow, that would be amazing. But for the most part, it takes people a long time because they're in constant denial. For instance, there's someone who was listening to this video for a couple of minutes, and they were in denial of what they were hearing, and they turned it off. And there's some of you who are listening to me right now, and they're like, I don't believe that, and you're in denial. And that's what I mean. It's the denial that keeps you from the truth, and therefore it keeps you from love. Because holding truth is holding love. Holding truth is holding love. Love cannot be present without the foundation of truth. So if you don't know the truth about this thing you're calling death, then you can't have love. And that means you will continue to live in the fear that you live in, being afraid of death. But there's no death. And you know, it's like when my mom died back in 1999. I'm gonna party like it's 1999. When my mom died, I didn't know what I know today. I didn't nude it. So I cried and I cried and I cried because I thought that was it. You know, it's like my mom's gone, I won't be able to see her. Now I had some concept of in that you know, we you know, I should say there was this belief, because you know, you heard it, you know, oh, I'm going to see my grandma, see my mom when we die, we're going to be together in heaven. So there were these loose concepts, not full truth, but the concept was there. But I didn't, who wants to wait 50 years? You know, I was like 20 something when my mom died. So who wants to wait, you know, 50 years to see your mom again or see a loved one again? It seems like forever, but it's really not. And the thing is, it feels like forever when you think this is all that there is. But when you know that life it goes on and there is no end to it, and that living 80 years here is nothing compared to the 50,000 years or the 100,000 years or the 200,000 years that you're going to live in the spirit world. It's just a fraction. It's a blip. And so when you know the expansiveness of your existence, when you know how long you're going to live, meaning there is no end to it, then you understand that this is nothing. I'm going to see my mom or my loved one in no time. And not only that, they're still around. They're still kicking. Like, you have no idea that, you know, your loved ones that you've claimed you've lost, and you didn't lose them. They're still around. They can see you. They're hanging around you. But you have this idea that they're gone, and they're not gone. And it's scary to you, but it's not. You know, when a child dies, when you have an infant who dies, there is a celestial being that comes and swoops up that child, the spirit body, real quick, like that. Abortion centers, there are celestial beings just hanging around abortion centers. Why? Because they're coming to get the child. The child has experienced so much trauma because the mom doesn't want the child. Really, when you have an abortion, you're not killing your child. You're just creating trauma for the child. That's it. You think, and that's the problem, you know, with women and these abortions. Like, you really think that you're getting rid of the baby? No, you're just harming the baby. That's all you're doing. And you can't help it because you're a degraded soul. So if you've had abortions, your child is still alive. There's a celestial being that came in and swooped up the child and has been taking care of the child ever since, trying to help the child through its emotional injuries that you've created, not from the pain So the physical pain, the physical trauma the child felt, sometimes the celestial being will try to will not try, but the celestial being can come in and remove the child during that time that the baby's being all chopped up with, however they do it. So however the doctors do it, by chopping up the baby inside the mom and then they suck it out. I don't know how they do it. I just know that it's a very traumatic experience for the baby, and so the celestial being will come and take it out of its physical body so that it doesn't, and shield it from that so it doesn't feel that kind of pain. But the emotional pain is there. They cannot shield the emotional pain because that's just part of the process. So if your child was born and you transferred all the emotional injuries to your child, it's no different. If your child isn't born, you still transferred all the emotional injuries to the child. Even up to the day of abortion, the feeling, thought of not wanting the baby, so the baby feels a rejection. It's no different. It's the same kind of rejection that a child feels when you say, "Get away from me. Get away from me." That kind of unloving behavior towards the child is what the child is feeling all the time. It's feeling a sense of rejection. And the child doesn't know the word rejection. The child just knows the feeling of rejection. We as souls do not need to know the language, the English language or the Spanish language of rejection. It just, because it's a feeling. Understand, words are descriptions of what already exists. That's it. The emotions and feelings, they're already there. The words are just to help people describe how they're feeling when they're not connected to their feelings. That's why we have to describe it. And there's some people who you can, like for instance, no one had, like, I don't want to say no one, but we were in I was in a staff meeting, and this person was being asked to do something, and the person did it, and someone said it wasn't good enough, and you just saw the feeling of defeat on their face, and I felt it. And she didn't have to use words. She was just so shut down, and it wasn't just that, like, she was disconnected. And it was, thinking about it, it wasn't just I feel bad. It was like it took her all the way back to her childhood when she felt like she wasn't good enough. And that's where the feeling came from. Like, that's what it triggered, because that person was like, it's kind of like you kind of look off into the distance. You're not really present because you're just so engulfed in the emotions in the moment. That's what was on her face during this staff meeting. And in that moment, and it was just about a letter that had to be rewritten. That wasn't good enough. It was rejected, so it had to be redone. So, but that's the feeling that the person felt. A feeling of defeat, a feeling of rejection, because her work, that which she created, was rejected. So that's what she felt at the time, and anyway, I don't want to get into that, but the children feel it. The children feel the feelings, and so there isn't any death. So if you are pregnant, if you've ever had an abortion, at least you know that your child is still alive, and you will be able to meet your child in the future. I mean, it's not your child, it's God's child, but the child that you helped to create, if the child is willing. If the child is willing. Because like I said, if you are in, in the spirit world, depending on your soul condition, you can't be, like, let's say the child, was aborted, and this thing you call death, there's no death, and it's whatever. So let's just say the child, was aborted. Celestial being came, swooped him up, raised the child for however many years. You've been here. Let's say you were 18 when it happened. You're 87 now. All right? And all those years, the child has been taken care of by celestial beings, being taught how to heal, learning love, learning that which you did not give the child. You didn't teach the child love. There was a sense of rejection. So now the celestial being is teaching the child how to love and accept itself to get over the rejection that you imposed upon the child. So let's say the child is in the 10th dimension, and you pass in the first dimension, and you progressed and you healed your soul to the point where now you're in the 5th dimension. If the child is not willing to see you at that point, you can't. The child will not do it. However, if it's a celestial being in the 10th dimension, that child, or the person you gave birth to or not gave birth to but aborted, they will come to you because now they have complete 100% understanding, compassion, and love, because they are now a celestial being. But let's take that soul out of the celestial realm, and let's just say that the soul is in the 6th dimension, which is not the celestial realm. And no, they are not a celestial being. They're just a regular spirit in the 6th dimension. And you're in the 3rd dimension. Because in the 6th dimension, you still hold emotional injuries. Once you pass into the 7th and get into the 8th, you have 0 emotional injuries within you. So the scenarios change. So if the child is in the 6th dimension and you're in the 3rd, and the child still has emotional injuries from what you did, you can't see your child because your child is not willing. Because remember, there's a separation in dimensions, and you can't go any higher than the 3rd dimension if that's where you're at. You can't go any higher than that because you don't have enough love to get into the next dimension. You have to release some emotional injuries and have more love within your soul in order to access the dimension, which is a higher state of love. It's a higher, that the frequency of that dimension has a different level of love, and until you meet that, you can't go there. And so there's this great distance. There's the 4th and the 5th that are between you. Now, the child can come down and see you at any time, because you can visit any dimension below you, but you just can't go 2 dimensions above you. So, if the child doesn't want to, the child doesn't have to. Simple as that. But there is a possibility. If you have sorrow, if the child in the 6th dimension has sorrow, not sorrow, but forgiveness, and has forgiven you, then of course the child will come down and see you, and you can meet your child. So there is a possibility for you to meet your child. At some point you will reunify with the child, depending on how long it is. It could be 1,000 years. There was this one spirit who, I think she was 50,000 years old or 40,000 years old, and she was separated from her parents all those years because she was in such a dark space, and her parents were, okay, let's just put it this way. She was in a dark space, but her parents were in an even darker space. So they were at a lower place, but she didn't know anything about the spirit world or anything like that. She was hanging around Earth for 50,000 years, and what she was doing is attaching herself to people on Earth and influencing them, specifically women in power, helping women to become in power, helping them do this and helping them, because she was a daughter of a ruler. And so back then, 50,000 years old, you have your king and queen, you have the ruler, whoever that is, and then she's the daughter, so she has power by way of her parents. So this is how she knew life to be, to control and rule. So when she died, she stayed around Earth, meaning she didn't die, but she left her her physical body, and so she was using her spirit body to do things around Earth, influencing people, degrading her soul more and more and more, becoming more angry, more in pain, thus creating more pain for other people, because it has to be expressed somewhere. It has to be expressed somewhere. Oh no, those sandals, those flip-flops, I could not walk barefoot like that. That'd be too hard on my heels. I don't like walking barefoot. Anyway, so yeah, anyway, like I said, there's life after this, is what I'm saying. It's not even life after. Even in the beginning of my video, in the intro, I have life, afterlife, the afterlife. There is no afterlife. It's just one continuous life. Like, I'm Zachary right now, and I'm living life on Earth, and when I experience this thing called death, I will still be in my spirit body, and I will still be Zachary. I will remember all of these videos that I've made. I will remember the friends that I've made. I will remember the good times that I've had with people. I will remember the bad times that I've encountered with people. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I ain't got time to be waiting for all these slow folks. So, I will remember everything. You will remember everything. Yep. And some of you who've listened to my videos, you'll think back on these videos when I was talking about this stuff. You know, some of you have been listening for a while and you've heard the things that I talked about regarding the spirit world and how things work, the celestial beings and the laws and the different dimensions and how to get to them and what to do and what all these different things that I've talked about. You'll recall them once you get there, because we're like, oh shit, like this stuff is really real. Oh my gosh. Seriously, some people are going to be shocked. Because you can hear what I'm saying. Even myself, I can hear what I'm saying. But to experience it is something different. You can say, yeah, it's going to be like this, it's going to be like that. And then you get there and you're like, whoa, it's really like that. Oh, this is cool. Or, oh shit, I'm in a dark place. What do I need to do to get out of it? Like all these different things. Some people will become very angry because, people who listen to my videos, I say, hey, clean up your soul. Clean up your soul. Get it cleaned up, because it's going to dictate everything. It's going to dictate more, or it's going to feel like it's dictating more in the spirit world than it does here, because, see, here you have willpower. So what I mean by that is, on this planet, the Creator, God, whatever you want to call it, has given all of us, all of these things that we see, the trees, the elements that we use to make concrete, to make sidewalks, the elements that we use to make buildings, and the light fixtures, and bedding, and dressers, and everything, water pitchers, cups, whatever. Like, all the things that are here, the Creator has given us, and we have used our imagination and desire to create these things. But, understand, it's like Play-Doh. God gave us Play-Doh and said, here, create whatever you want. Whatever you want, create it. Even if you have a dark soul, you can create a $1 billion empire. Yep. You can create a $1 billion empire. As dark as your soul is, you can create it. Because I'm trying to allow you to understand that you are a creator. You create everything in your life. But you can only do that because I gave you the Play-Doh to do it. But in the spirit world, what allows you to create is the love within your soul. No love, no creation of your desires. The only thing that you'll be able to create is the darkness within your soul, because it's on automatic pilot. It's less effort to create in the spirit world than it is here. You don't have to mine elements and put it together, mix it here and let it set and do this and do that. It's automatic. Your house, you want a house, you want it to look a certain way, like that. Boom. You conjure it up in your mind, you desire it, it manifests right in front of your eyes. That's how easy it is to manifest in the spirit world. It's much difficult to do it here because you have to use your willpower, your manpower. You have to use it to create it here. Things don't just pop up, but they can, but someone else has to create it. So for instance, you may want a new car and the law of attraction says, hey, yeah, you can have a new car. That's your desire, but someone has to make that car in order for you to get it. So can you win a car? Absolutely, but someone has to make it in order for you to get it. That's the difference. Here, you have to be a full participant in order to create something. And that's just to show you that you can do it. How else do you learn this? And the thing is, that's not even true across the board. That's not true, because Adam and Eve were able to manifest things differently than they can now. They were able to manifest like that. They didn't have to use they could imagine it and desire it. It would really literally manifest for them. But because we're so degraded, we have to use manpower. We have to use our willpower. Adam and Eve did not know. Adam and Eve did not know what willpower or manpower was until they lost it. Meaning they lost the ability to manifest instantly. See, they're kind of going off subject, but really not. Because it's just, I'm trying to illustrate the difference between, or what happened, like what we once had and what we're capable of doing on the earth. Jesus is one of them. I should say that. Jesus was one of the people who was able to manifest certain things out of nothing. He was able to do that. I knew that was coming. I don't know where it is, but anyway, he was able to, when he manifested a body. He manifested three or five, I can't remember how many bodies he manifested. But after they crucified him, he came back many times and presented himself to many different people. In different bodies. They were not the same bodies. And he did that on purpose. To show that there is no death. That was the whole purpose of Jesus' crucifixion. Or is it crucifixion? Crucifixion. I'm making up words. That was the reason for his crucifixion. Is to prove that death, it doesn't exist. You continue. If he wasn't able, or if he wasn't still alive, he wouldn't have been able to come back. And that's why he picked a different body. If he would have picked the same body, they would have believed that he never died. That was the whole point of coming in a different body. To prove, I am me, but I'm in a different body, but I'm still me. The man that you knew before, I stand before you. Really. That was the whole purpose of the crucifixion. I almost said that other word again. And so there just is no death. That's what that action was for, to prove that. Jesus didn't have to die. He had enough love within him to ward off the people. But he wanted to prove something, and that's what he proved. And there was no fear in that, because he knew because he was aware of the spirit world. As he was living in the physical body, he was also aware of the spirit world. Because each night we go to sleep, we go to the spirit world. Each night we go to sleep, we go into the spirit world. You're there every single night. So how I'm explaining it, like I said, when you die, you go to the spirit world. You're there every single night. You're just not aware of it. And the people who are not aware of it are the people who are afraid of death. They're afraid of death. And so you can't bring the awareness that you have in the spirit world, you cannot bring that consciousness or awareness to your physical awake state, because your soul is, when you're living on earth, you're afraid of death. So what has to be sustained? Your fear. Your fear must be sustained. You must choose not to be fearful. You must choose to accept the truth in order to know the truth in both places. If there are truths that you know in the spirit world and you don't know them here, there's a fear within you. Now, I may be able to talk about it, but I'm not remembering my spirit world life. So that means there's fears within me. On some level, in some way, shape, or form, there's still fear within me. And it's almost like I can't cross the barrier. I can't bring that knowledge. I can't bring that awareness with me. But there are people who are connected like that, and they remember the spirit. It doesn't happen all the time. You can have out-of-body experience, which is the same thing. It's like you're just aware of the spirit. Like if you take some kind of, ayahuasca or something like that. If you take some kind of drug like that, you can detach in a conscious state. You can detach from your physical body and see things from your spirit eyes. And people are like, oh wow, the colors are so vivid, everything is so, and that's true. The colors are more vivid. Your spirit body eyes are more capable or enhanced, if you will, and you're able, it's almost like Superman is X-ray vision, he's able to see things that everybody else can't. And it's no different. Your body is able to see things that your physical eyes can't. Your spirit body eyes are tuned to detect certain things. For instance, you can see air with your spirit body eyes. It's there. Put your head out of a moving car at 65 miles per hour, and you'll feel the wind. You'll feel the air. It's hitting you in the face. It's a physical thing, so it's there. And so with the spirit eyes, you can actually see that. You can see infrared light. You can see all kinds of things that you cannot currently see with your physical eyes. They're just abilities that you have. You have them now, but like I said, you can't bring those abilities into your current awareness because you're not even trying to look through your spirit eyes. And for most, they don't even know how to do it. They're like, how do I look through my spirit eyes? Some people can see auras. Well, the auras are not really seen with the physical eyes because the physical eyes can only see the physical things. But the non-physical, what we call non-physical, those things like the aura, energy, you can see that with your spirit eyes. And so those who can see auras, they're actually seeing auras through their spirit eyes. That's it. But anyway, there is no death. There's no reason to fear it. And when you... and that's one of the things, like, I don't mourn my mother. Like, I'm like, oh, my mom's gone. I know she's out doing her thing. Whatever she's doing. I know sometimes she hangs around me. She's working on herself. I feel that she's working on herself. And also, my mother had a near-death experience, and that's one of the reasons why I guess that's part of the reason why I'm open to it. Because she shared with me what she experienced. Now, at the time, I didn't really understand what she was talking about, and I borderline didn't believe her, but I understood that, she experienced something. I didn't experience it, so I couldn't verify it, but she shared it with me, and when I learned other things about death, what my mother shared with me made sense. I was able to put it into perspective. I was like, okay, now I understand what she was talking about. So when she said we were in the car accident and she died, or what looked like she died, she saw her mom. Her mother greeted her. Some other people greeted her. She said some friends were there. And she said there were some strangers. And now I know about the celestial spirits. So now I know that she was actually greeted by these strangers, these celestial beings. She didn't know who they were, but they were there to help her. They were there to help her get to transition, to become, because she didn't know anything about the spirit world, but she kind of did, because when she had the near-death experience, well, afterwards, like, she had an idea that something more was beyond it, and she told me, she goes, I don't fear death. And my mother wasn't, she would say she doesn't fear death. She's like, I don't fear death. There's nothing to be feared. But she had an understanding, a Jehovah's Witness understanding, which is, there's more afterwards. So there was some type of concept, a loose concept that there was more afterward. But when she had the near-death experience, that really solidified it for her. And she's like, I don't fear death at all. There's nothing to fear. Because when she was getting ready to transition, she didn't feel it. She didn't experience anything that caused her fear. Now, granted, she wasn't in the spirit world where her soul condition was going to take her. There was about a 2-week period where there's like a soft landing, if you will. It's like if you can picture life flying in an airplane, and you're flying up high, but as you're dying, you're coming down and you're landing. You're not landing like a helicopter. You're not landing like a helicopter. So you're landing on a meadow, if you will. You know, it's a soft landing with wheels. You're coming down slowly, you know, but the Creator doesn't do that to you. You know, the Creator understands the Creator is not trying to inflict any pain upon you. And so the Creator has designed it to where a celestial being will come and help you get acclimated and help you understand, instead of just throwing you in this place that you don't even know, you know, where you're at or what's going on. Now you have that option, and people do this all the time. When the celestial being or beings come to greet you and try to help you transition, a lot of people, if you're in pain, you're like, get away from me, I don't know who you are, just get out of my way. And the celestial being has to obey that, because that's your desire, and the celestial being will respect your free will, and your free will is to have them not be there, and they will leave you alone. But that's your choice. And so if you're left alone and you remain clueless, that is your choice. And you know, there's this one video. This is going to be an extra long video, because I'm going to tie a video, instead of putting it in the description, I'm going to actually put it at the end of this video. And it's a video of this spirit who was born in the 1600s, if I'm not mistaken. And he talks about death. He talks about his belief about death, his fear about death. He talks about what happened when he died. And he talks about someone who greeted him that he had an experience with on Earth, and he was shocked to see that person there. And it just really, really demonstrates the continuance of life, and how what we do here is connected to our life on the other side. Everything is connected. There is no, oh, I was here, now I have a new existence here. No, it's the same existence. It's the same life. It's not an afterlife. It's a continuation. It's no different than living on Crenshaw, here in the hood on Crenshaw Boulevard, and then you wake up in Beverly Hills. Or you live in Beverly Hills and you wake up on Crenshaw Boulevard, depending on your soul condition. Because that's going to happen to a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are very wealthy and they have a lot of things, and they believe that's going to be their life, and they have treated people badly, treated people wrongly, and just treated people without love. And now when they die, they go, or when they leave this place, they end up in a dark place, and they don't understand why. Look, I've said it before, your love is the currency in the spirit world. You can't buy a mansion with dollar bills. Dollar bills, dollar bills. You can't do that. So, you have to have love if you want something. You want a house? Love. You want to be in this place? Love. You want to experience this? Love. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take love. So, get with it, people. Get with the love. Get with improving yourself. Get with loving yourself. Get with the self-love. Because you're going to need it. Trust me, you're going to need it. 30 miles an hour. I didn't know it was 30 miles an hour here. I should have known. That's the law. Isn't 30-mile residential area some 25? Anyway, that's that. So, I just wanted to say that. I just wanted to share that with you. There's no reason to fear death. Do some research on death. Look up near-death experiences. Actually, you know, like I said, I'm going to attach a video to this video of a spirit who is still alive, who once lived in the 1700s, and they're still here. All this time my air conditioner's been on, wasting all that gas. They're still around, and that means you're going to be still around when you exit the earth, and you live in your spirit body. When you release from your physical body, it still goes on, and you'll still be around. That's the truth of it, people. You can't, and there's nothing you can do about it. Whether you believe it or not, it's going to happen. So you might as well just go ahead and get on board with the truth. and with all truth. The truth is going to yield whatever it's going to yield. You cannot change that. You can deny it. You can use your willpower to avoid it. But ultimately, the truth will come and reach you. It will reach you. But instead of letting it reach you in a karmic way, seek it out and accept it and allow it to be a part of you. As you allow the truth to enter your soul, it doesn't have to be pressed upon you through karma. And this is a choice that you have to make. I don't like anything being pressed upon me. So I go out, I seek it out, I absorb it, I learn it, I know it, I understand it, it's part of me. And the universe doesn't have any business, any reason to press it upon me because I've already accepted it. I've already accepted that there is a God. Therefore, I don't have an issue with God. I've already accepted that people are evil and people are evil and mean because of the things that are within their soul. Therefore, I'm not having to experience the evil things that people do in such a manner that would be jarring. Did my mother do a bunch of unloving things? Absolutely. I'm accepting of this. I understand why she did it. There's no judgment because of it. Therefore, I don't have to suffer. But if you hate the fact that it happened to you, you hate the fact that, things, you were prevented from doing things as a child and you want to hold on to that anger and hold on to that rage and channel it towards people and be unloving to others and be unloving to yourself, then fine. But understand that the truth will be pressed upon you and you're not going to like it. And it's the truth. The truth is just the truth. The pain comes from your resistance of that truth. Look, the universe is more powerful than you are. In a weakened state, a degraded soul does not have a great deal of power. So therefore, the universe will impose its power upon you. But when the soul has more power, when the soul has more love, it controls the universe. The universe is impressed upon the soul. The soul is pressed upon the universe and tells the universe what to do. Hey, I want to manifest this. Hey, I want this. I want to manifest this. I want to manifest that. I want this house to look like this. I want a big yard. I want property. I want an animal to be part of my existence. This is what I want. And the universe has no choice but to respond to you because you are a soul in command. If you have love within your soul, you command the universe. If you do not have love within your soul, the universe will command you. Don't let it happen, people. Don't let it happen. What does that mean? It means people control you. It means people do things to you that are unloving. And so the universe is pressing it upon you to get you to understand that you are not living your life the way the Creator intended for you to live your life. You're not living your life in love. You're not living your life having power. You're not living your life being able to manifest what you want. Therefore, the universe has to do all these things to get you to open your eyes to see the truth, which is you are a powerful being. And now it's time that you own it. It's really that simple. But death, it's not real, but what you call death is coming. Let's just say that. It's not real, but what you call it is coming. And it's coming for everyone. And it's only coming for the people who are resistant to it. It doesn't come to those who are aware that it exists and looking forward to it. Meaning open and allowing to experiencing it. Death, I'm not afraid of. I'm actually quite excited to see exactly what is over there that I know is already over there. I can't wait to be able to manifest in a way that I can't hear. I can't wait. I just can't wait. There's certain things that I want to see that I can't see now. So, I'm open to it. I'm not saying I want to die right now. That's not what I'm saying. Do not get that impression, because that's not what I'm saying. But when the time comes, I'm okay with it. But I'm not trying to rush it. Anyway, all right, everyone. I'll put the video, that next video right after this. And so have a wonderful Wednesday. And that's it. Take care. Bye now.
All right. So the topic of today's talk is spirit relationships. That's the main heading. And then the sub-point is...
loving you.
Well, I had it perfectly yesterday, didn't I? It was actually about the loving use of mediumship. So it's going to be called the loving use of mediumship. So that's what we wanted to discuss with you today. But instead of just giving you sort of a talk about it, we're going to handle it a bit differently. What we're going to do, and the reason why Peter is up and Mary are up with me, is Peter is going to give you, he's going to channel a spirit. The spirit's name is Angelo, who some of you have already met. But Angelo is going to give you a bit of background about himself and let you get to know him a little first. And then Mary is going to channel two spirits who are a soulmate couple in the spirit world. Their names are Rachel and Timothy, and they used to be with us in the 1st century as well. So they'll give you a bit of background about themselves. So what we want to do firstly is get to know the spirits that we're speaking to. Once we know them, and you can ask them some questions during this process if you wish as well. Once we get to know them, the three of us, and when I say the three of us, basically Peter and Mary are going to channel. So there will actually be 4 people speaking to you about the subject of the loving use of mediumship. There'll be Angelo speaking to you about it. There'll be, for Mary, there'll be Timothy and Rachel speaking to you about it, and then I'll add my 2 bobs worth in occasionally as well. Does that make sense? So instead of giving a talk where just I'm giving the talk, it'll be a shared talk between 3 spirits and myself. So that's how we're going to handle today's discussion.
And so, Peter and Mary are a bit nervous about getting out of the way.
Do you mind sharing some of the stuff that I've got with Angelo? Because I think that's quite appropriate for everyone down
certainly.
here
So
who's experienced Angelo.
So what we've attempted to do is talk to Peter about truly reflecting Angelo's personality to you, because Angelo is actually a flamboyant Italian, right? And Peter is not a flamboyant Italian, as you know. So one of the things that is difficult for Peter to do is to reflect the actual personality of the spirit Angelo. And so what we've tried to encourage Peter to do is to sort of allow himself to be the flamboyant Italian that is going to be channeling through.
I'm wearing white. That's Angelo's favourite colour, so that's a start.
That's a start. The other problem that many people who come from natural love type of areas with regard to channeling is the spirits who are natural love spirits often have this imposition that they place upon people who channel natural love spirits. And the imposition they place is that you've got to honour them all the time, and you've got to put them in a bit of a higher position than yourself. And so what's happened historically for the Lytton Hitchens family is that they have all had this tendency, they all can channel, but they've all had the tendency to put the spirit into a higher position and then to become a little rigid and formal with regard to the channeling that those spirits do. Now, while that might be suitable for a person who's on the natural love path and who believes himself to be higher than you, the people on the divine love path, and particularly the ones who have become celestial spirits, they don't believe themselves to be higher than you. They just feel that they're your brothers and sisters, and they just try to be themselves. And so while it's okay perhaps to channel natural love spirits in that way, channeling spirits who are on the divine love path, often those spirits on the divine love path want you to be more informal and realistic. So what we've asked Peter to do is just to allow himself to relax and let himself be this flamboyant Italian, and allow himself to also relax with the formality. For Mary and for Peter, there has often been difficulties channeling information that is related to specific things that could affect your life, where you make a choice or a decision and then go on a different path. And so they are sometimes very worried about channeling something that you then change your life about. So there's that emotion that's affected the channeling. There's also the emotion sometimes of they're a little afraid of making you angry, whereas our celestial spirit friends are not afraid of making you angry at all. Does that make sense? So because of that fear, there's sometimes the resistance to being more open about the truth. And for Mary, there is often the emotions related to her own life with the spirits. Does that make sense? So her life with the spirits, our life with the spirits in the 1st century were quite, I suppose you could say, our life was quite close with them, so we know them well, but there's also quite a lot of emotions that we have about our experiences with those particular people that Mary has yet to release. And so sometimes she gets a bit teary when they start speaking about their life and so forth and our involvement in their life. And that, of course, causes the communication also to suffer a little in terms of its accuracy. So what we did last night is we talked together about these particular things and tried to address some of the emotions so that today we could have a fairly open discussion with you, with three spirits and myself, about the discussion about the loving use of mediumship. Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's also one other thing that affects me a lot, channeling my guides, and I'm sure it's relevant for a lot of you, just in having a relationship with your guides, and that is the amount of love that they have for each of us. And often I find that's very emotional to open up to receiving that amount of love. It triggers a lot of grief in me, so that's another thing that comes up for me that is also relevant for you guys, I feel. So.
Okay.
And just for myself, like after our conversation last night, the first thing I said to Angela this morning is like, Angela, you got to give me the heads up here. What are we going to talk about today? And I'm wanting the final details, and Angela's like, you don't need to know anything.
Rachel did exactly the same thing with me. She said, you don't need to prepare, it's my story. Could you just tell me the details?
It's like a game of football, like you get all stressed and whatever, and it's like, it needs to be where you don't even, literally, it's just another day, and it's like, yeah. And I still have all these fears that come up about accuracy and about, the intent and stuff like that.
So the only one sitting here that needs to be worried about what he's saying is myself, because I'm not channeling anybody, and the two next to me need to just stay in this space of accurately channeling the information as best they're able. So that's what we're hoping to do today. Now, in that process, we're hoping also that you can start to see the character and nature of the spirits that surround us at different times. And with regard to these three spirits, they are all celestial spirits, so we hopefully will be able to demonstrate to you to a bit larger degree the true character and nature of a celestial spirit, rather than feeling all formal and all worried about what's really going on with our spirit friends. So that's what we're going to do today. So the first thing that we wanted to do is to introduce you to them in a manner where they tell a bit of their story about their life and when they lived on Earth, what happened to them while they were living on Earth, when they died, or what happened to them when they passed, when they arrived in the spirit world, how they felt, what happened to them during their development in the spirit world, when they met their soulmates and all those kind of issues, so that you get a bit of a picture about their life and also a bit of a picture about their character. And now during this process, feel free to ask them questions about their life. Does that make sense? That come up for you. So don't be afraid to ask questions, but if we can microphone the questions. So where's Laura? There's the microphone there. So the microphone will just need to be passed around. So if you do ask a question and you point it out, please just wait for the microphone to come so that we can actually record your question. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Well, who do you want to start with first? Would you like to know Angelo more, or would you like to know Rachel and Timothy first? Who would you like to start with? What's the general feeling? You want to start with Angelo? Okay. So away we go.
It was going to happen, wasn't it?
We'll start with Angelo first. Where's the family on Angelo? I can't kill him. No, that's all right.
You can't pigeonhole Angelo.
No.
Finally. It's taken a while. Buongiorno, anyway.
Buongiorno.
Yes. My life was very ordinary. You see celestials having grandeur in their life. My life on earth was very simple. My father was a fisherman, and you were either a boy or you were a man. There was no in between. And so for me, I was with my mother till I was 5 years old, and then I was a man with my father. He fished, and any of you have been fishing, the smell of fish, I did not like the smell of fish. So one day in my village, I saw the most grand boat I'd ever seen. I was 15, and this boat was a merchant boat. It had beautiful smells. This man knows beautiful smells. The smells that I'd never smelt before, and they certainly weren't fish. So I say to my father, my time fishing is done. No more fishing, I am done. My mother, she was just a mother, so she fed us and looked after us. That's how we saw our mothers. We didn't see them any other way. We had to become man as soon as possible. So I just said goodbye to my mother. I am going on this boat. This man who was the captain of the boat, his name Roberto, and Roberto was the first father I had ever had. For the next 5 years, he took me all around the Mediterranean Sea. We traded here and we traded there. But what I remember most about Roberto is he taught me about stars. He taught me how to feel the ocean. These days, a captain does not know how to feel the ocean. In our day, it was 1626 when I was born, so 1636 when I first really started learning the sea, and by 1640, it was very dangerous times in the Mediterranean Sea. So, Roberto was a true seaman, a true captain. He went where no other boats went. He understood the coral reefs. He understood when it was going to rain. But he taught me the stars, and I think the stars were the most beautiful thing he taught. Then, just when I felt my life was perfect, and that this was always going to be the way, one morning I went into his cabin, and I'd never seen a dead person before. And here was my father, who I saw as my father, and he looked the most ugly sight I'd ever seen. His jaw was open, his eyes were wide open, and I did not know what to do. He was the first man I loved, and I didn't know how to cry. And so, it was the most difficult, but one of the most important times in my life. I remember grabbing a sheet and wrapping up this dead thing who had once been so much to me. And I could not work out how the feelings I had to this man were no longer in this thing before me. It took me another 5 years to share a tear for the greatest friend I ever had while I was on earth. Anyway, his will was read on the boat, and then they said, this boat and all his belongings now belong to Angelo Rimbardi. And then suddenly a man clapped me on the shoulder and said, well done, son. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, this is all yours. And I was horrified. Roberto had given me his boat and all his possessions. So, for the next 5 years, I was terrified. So, instead of trading large quantities, we traded little routes. I did little short trips, no big trips. And then, one day, we were near Morocco, and I was in trouble. I had a man come up to me and say, one of our Portuguese boats has gone down and we need your boat. This was no ordinary man. He was not asking me, he was telling me. And I said, so what are we doing? He said, you do not need to know. All you need to do is follow those 3 boats over there. And you have an order to supply. And you will be paid more money than you have ever paid. So the amount was like 1 year's work for a few months. So we arrived at the port, and I still had no idea. And then suddenly it dawned upon me when I saw all these men in chains, one after the other. They were chained at the hands and chained at the feet. And some of them even had neck collars going from one to the other. Most of them, their eyes. I always remember their eyes. So they came on my boat, 326 of them, where normally only 10 men used to live. 326 slaves were now on my boat. We had to sail for 2.5 months. The smell, you know how I didn't like fish smell. This smell was so much different. And I remember there was this one man that came on the boat. And this is probably one of the most important parts of my whole life that I did not know at the time. He came on the boat, and he had these scabs on his feet and his hands and his neck, and especially on his chest. They were like big welts, pussy welts. I had nowhere to put this man, so I put him on my bed. That was the only place that I felt was okay. I couldn't put him in my men's quarters. So from that moment onwards, he stayed in my quarters, and we treated him the best we could, but it wasn't very good. And then when we finally got to our destination, this man was walked off the boat with all the rest. I did not even know his name. I did not even know his name. Then I arrived home to my wife. I had only been married for a short time. And it was the one and only time that I ever cried on earth. And I cried and promised myself that I would never jump on a boat again. And from that moment onwards, I no longer sailed the sea. From that moment on, the rest of my life was very ordinary. But the most important part of this story is when I passed. Who do you think was the first person I saw when I passed? This slave who had been on my bed was the man who introduced me to my new life. This man. He's even more beautiful now than he was then. That's my introduction.
So should we ask the audience whether they'd like to ask you some questions?
They can.
What would you like to ask, Angelo? Come down to Ina, down the front here.
What condition did you pass in when you died?
Well, I was an ordinary man who did ordinary things. So my condition was not bright, but it was not dark. So when I went, I could feel my body, and I knew that I had moved from earth to another space. So I was never earthbound. Then when I arrived, it was a state of curiosity of what this place was like. I was not a religious man. See, if you were a religious man back then and you were sailing a boat, you saw so many people who believed in God who didn't survive the sea. So my curiosity was more after factual information. So when my body arrived in the spirit world, I would be what you would call in the first sphere state. I was open, but I had not been loving to my wife. I had not cared for many things. And I certainly didn't understand many things.
Angela, can I ask you a question? I wonder what changed for you after you entered the spirit world. Obviously now you have a strong desire for God. What changed for you?
Well, I blame things that happen in my life on those around them rather than realizing that it was my opportunity to do whatever I wanted to do. When I was a child, I felt that I had to be a fisherman. Then when I realized I didn't have to be a fisherman, that was the first time in my life on earth that there was a change. When I got to the spirit world, my greatest opportunity was the first time I met this slave that had been with me. Because he showed me that there was compassion and there was love in the spirit world. And I was not expecting that. And then by asking him how he could love after what had happened to him, that was the beginning of my journey. He had so much love for me, and I felt I hadn't done enough to help him. When he had died 3 days after he had arrived at shore, after being on my boat. And yet, when I arrived in the spirit world, he was there as if the most gracious friend I had ever met.
Thank you.
Hi, Angelo. It's nice to see you without Peter in the way.
I just told him to relax.
Sorry, Peter. I've been wondering about this whole process of like when we end up doing things like what you felt you had to do of carrying all those slaves, and a part of you obviously knew it was wrong, and a part of you felt obviously probably that you had to go along with it.
Well, it's not that I had to go along with it.
Yeah, so that whole process.
The question I have for all of you is this word about death. I've been talking to Peter lots about this word. There is a belief that there's this separation between this life and the next life. If I had arrived at that point and this man had said to me that you are carrying slaves on your boat, if I realized in that moment that if I said no, that I would not die, I probably would have said no. If I believed that. Because in that state, we're simply going from one place to another. Our journey does not stop. I know that now.
So what you're saying is that if you realised that you could have just said no, he probably would have murdered you.
He would have killed me, but that would have been okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would have been in a second or third sphere space when I went.
So you could, I guess, you could really feel the impact it had on your soul to go along with it. Is that?
We feel that we can't make choices when we live on earth.
Yeah.
And this is one of the greatest false beliefs that many of you have, that you can't make the choice. You are constantly making a choice every second of every day. And it's your choice, regardless of who influences that choice.
Right.
It's your choice, just like it was my choice.
And if you made a choice to honour the truth and honour love, you might have passed immediately, but you would have passed into a far better condition because you'd made the choice because you feared death.
Yes.
You made a different choice, and then, of course, when you did eventually pass, you passed into a worse condition.
And this fear of death went through my whole life. Because we make decisions from that moment onwards related to that. So, I used to love sailing boats. I used to love being on the water. I sacrificed that for the next 26 years of my life. Just because of one decision I had made.
So it was almost guilt about the decision you had made.
Correct.
Yes.
And as a man, you do not cry. You do not cry. That is very false, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
If I had cried, it would change many things. Just by crying and sharing with my wife meant that we lived a friendship life from that moment onwards, rather than a hateful, angry life together.
So Angelo, so after you entered the spirit world, your old friend who treated you like his long-lost brother, obviously mentored you. He helped you come to terms with life in the spirit world. Obviously he was connected to God, this man.
Yes.
And this had a great influence on you.
You could just see his face
Yeah,
and you knew he was connected to something that I was not.
yeah,
He didn't even mention the word God in
Yeah.
our initial conversations.
yeah, yeah. So what happened in that initial phase once you got to know him? You were inquisitive, you wanted to, you asked questions. What were the kind of questions you asked?
The first question I asked him was, how could he love me?
Yep. Because you didn't do enough to help him.
I didn't do anything to help him. Otherwise, I would have kept him on my boat, and I wouldn't have let him go to shore even. You know, so I said, how could he love after what had happened to him?
And what did he say in return?
He simply said that they did not understand what they were doing. And if they had understood that love is stronger than pain and revenge and control, and that the reason that they did what they did is because they were terrified in themselves. See, even to the fact that they had them in chains, they were terrified of these men. And so he actually saw initially that we were the weak ones rather than himself.
So after you arrived in the spirit world and you sort of were reintroduced to love in a way, that's really what happened.
We had to start at the beginning.
Yep. And how long did it take you to come to terms with some of the things about love? Like, was it just a simple matter of going, oh yeah, I realised I was out of harmony with love there, and let's move on? Or what actually happened?
As an Italian man, there's certain things that were very easy, but when it came to a woman and how I treated women generally, that took a long time.
Right. When you say a long time, if you can compare it to Earth time?
Well, for me, within the first sphere where I was, it took 36 of your years for me just to open up to how I had treated women in my life.
Right. Yep.
Yes. Whereas I already had this guilt and shame around certain things that I'd done in my life. That didn't take more than a couple of years.
Because they were things you already knew that you'd done wrong.
Yes.
Whereas the women relationship, you didn't know that you'd done anything wrong.
No, well, see, even how I was married, I didn't choose my wife, so to speak. It's strange because it wasn't an arranged marriage, but it was. I was a seaman. I was very rarely on land. And then my parents basically said to me, this will be your wife.
Yeah. Yeah. And after you had dealt with the women issue in the spirit world, so for that 36 years later, what did you start to notice then inside of yourself?
I noticed within my body, my spirit and soul, then that there was a caring for that I hadn't had before.
Mm-hmm.
So we see love as love, but there was a part of myself that had never actually wanted to love the opposite sex as an equal, as someone that I wanted to embrace and share with me.
Yep. So after that, what then happened?
Well, after that, I
So is
still
that the time you entered the second sphere?
No, I
or
still stayed in the first sphere.
Yep.
It was 126 years before I arrived in the second sphere.
Right. So it took you 126 years to to go through the lessons of the first sphere, if you like.
Yes. And within the first sphere, as I went through the lessons, then I was able to discover more things in the first sphere. And every now and then I was given the opportunity to see what happens in the second and third sphere.
Yep.
But I was not able to stay in those places.
When you say you were given the opportunity, spirits lent you the power to just visit those places?
They showed me. I was able to go and visit.
Yep. Yep.
Yes.
And that then increased your desire, did it?
It was like knowing that the more that I open myself up, the more that I'm going to learn about myself. And I never went to school.
Yep.
And the spirit world is such a discovery.
Pretty
It's-
big school. Yeah.
It's so exciting to be able to learn all these things that I didn't know about when I lived. So I stayed in the second sphere a long time.
So you basically arrived in the second sphere, what would have been about 1700 and late 1700s, would it have
Correct,
been in our
yes.
time? And then you stayed in the second sphere
For another 100 years.
100 years there too.
Yes.
And,
And-
what kind of things did you learn about there?
Well, I was fascinated about the earth. And in the second sphere, you have like libraries all around you. And one of the things that happens in the spirit world is the second sphere can become too comfortable for you. You can lose desire to want to discover more. You're not in any pain. I was not in any pain. My body felt good. I felt okay. And while I was there, I didn't need to keep looking at these emotions that I had as far as wanting to discover a soulmate or even open myself up to the possibility.
So you became very involved in intellectual pursuits.
All intellectual, yes. And that's why I had to stay there so long.
Yep. And what caused you then to get out of that?
My mother,
Your mother. What effect did she have?
she came to me one day and said, "Angelo, you're a nice boy."
And you said, "I know that, Mum."
I'd been in the spirit world a long time at this stage and she's still calling me a boy.
Yeah, yeah. It's a bit rough, isn't it?
Bit wrong.
Yeah.
And she said, "Angelo, you always wanted to become a man. If you want to become a man, it's time you let go of some of these beliefs that you have."
And what beliefs were those?
Starting with the fact that women aren't here to serve you.
Yep, that's a fairly big belief you would have had.
And she said, if you open yourself to the possibility with friendship, this will start a new journey that you can't even imagine.
Yep.
So then, from that point onwards, I started interacting with women in the spirit world that I had not even done to that point.
So did you even see many before then?
No.
No.
No, I had no desire.
Hmm.
Yes.
So you started interacting with women, and what did you learn through that process?
Well, I learned through that process that when you're with a woman in the spirit world, that you see things with the woman. And I could see that I didn't have a match with the women that I was with.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you had basically a series of relationships. Was that how it worked out?
To start with,
Yeah.
yes.
But with every relationship, there was a degree of dissatisfaction.
Correct.
Right.
Yes. There was no holding of the love.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It was like a short desire that was fulfilled and then gone.
Yeah. So what then caused you to move into the third sphere?
When I opened up here.
Yeah. So,
And
yeah.
I started to look at where things went.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a chord that I was able to follow into the third sphere.
A chord. You opened up your heart,
Yes.
and then you noticed this cord linking your heart
Yes.
to something else.
And it was a lady in the third sphere.
Right. So always a woman that leads you.
But did you notice that she was in the third sphere before I was?
Yes, yeah. Yeah. So she'd obviously opened up her heart.
She had.
She had.
She had opened up her heart to me.
Yeah.
And she had known about me for 200 odd years
So for 200 years she had opened her heart to you without you responding.
without me responding.
And what was her name?
Gloria. We'll call her Gloria.
We call her Gloria. Yeah. Okay. So you sort of felt the draw from Gloria into the third dimension.
Yes.
And in that process, what happened? You opened your heart, and that would have meant then you became a lot more emotional. Is that how?
I opened my heart and then I went straight back to the first sphere.
Okay. Yeah. And what did you have to learn in the first sphere?
There was a lot of grief.
Yeah. So a lot of crying that you had to connect with. Yeah. So you connected with the tears and cried and
And then I'd be straight back to the third sphere.
yeah. So it went like a yo-yo for a while, like that, was it? Back and
Yes.
forward between the second and first spheres and the third sphere.
It'd be like we were in conversation and then I'd suddenly be somewhere else.
So we'd be talking, and it's like you jumping over to somewhere else in another part of the world all of a sudden.
Yes.
Yeah, and wondering why you're there. Did you wonder why you were there? Or
It was pointed out to me many times.
right. Yeah. Yeah. And then once you released that emotion, you went back to
Well, every time you release that emotion, when you go back to your other half, it's stronger.
Yep. So you had a stronger connection.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you discover other things that you did not know before.
Yep.
So every time I released something, it's like I saw more.
Yep. And therefore had more understanding and all of those kind of things.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, so you entered the third sphere about what time of our time here on Earth? What,
1830.
1830. So we're now talking a couple of hundred years after, or just nearly a couple of hundred years after you passed.
Yes.
Yeah. Or is that right? Because when did you actually pass?
I passed in 1662.
Right. So we're talking about 180 years after you've passed.
Yeah.
You entered the third sphere. And
And when I entered the third sphere, I was going backwards and forwards.
so sort of jumping back and forward depending on what emotions you had to deal with at the time.
Yes.
Yep. So what happened after then? Like what caused you to discover God?
Well, I knew that there had to be something that was doing this because it wasn't me, and it certainly wasn't my partner. And that's when I met someone who was able to share with me the laws of God.
Yep. Did your soulmate know those laws?
No, she did not.
She hadn't learned them either.
And when we listened to start with, there was no mention of God, simply the laws that
Yep.
operate in the spirit
In the
world.
spirit world, yeah. So you started to learn about what law caused you to jump back to the first sphere when you had an emotion.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
And laws about the heart. You started to learn some of the laws about the emotions.
Yes. And it was very important that I did not know about God first
Yep.
for my own opening.
Yeah. Why was that? What would have happened there if you had known? Do you think?
If I had just gone straight into wanting the desire to connect to God, I would have left out these big parts of myself that needed to be addressed first.
Right, so you would have probably tried to intellectualise your connection with God.
I would have stayed in the sixth sphere for a long time.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
By allowing myself to look at how I love myself and that what was happening around me was because of my interactions was very important.
Yeah. So when you started to be introduced to God's laws, what effect did that have on you?
I got so excited.
Right.
It was a relief.
Yep.
It was a relief. And I actually just cried about that for a long time. It was such a relief because many of you have a feeling every now and then that comes over you as if someone's there for you, but you can't be brave enough, or you're not brave enough in that moment to want to discover who that is.
Yep.
I got that braveness
Yeah.
in that time.
Yeah. So we're now talking about sort of the mid-1800s in
Yes.
terms of Earth time, and we're a couple of hundred years now since you were on Earth.
Yep.
And then what? So what happened after that? Was it a slow process, or
No,
did you
it
still
was very
find
fast.
very fast from then on?
Yes.
And did you find yourself just flicking back, dealing with an emotion, moving forward each time now?
That still happens now.
Yep.
So now I spend a large part of my time in the 15th sphere,
Yep.
but I regularly go back to the 13th and 12th sphere.
Yep.
And that's mainly because my lady is there.
Is there too?
So Gloria is in the 12th, 13th sphere.
Yep. So she took a bit longer to discover God's laws, did she, and therefore have an interest in God, or what happened there?
Well, her block, even now, is she sees God as being responsible for injustice.
Right.
And she finds that even now, that's the one thing that she's continuing to work on.
Yeah. So if she is in the 13th sphere, then surely she's at one with God. So how could she then see God as a source of injustice?
Well, she sees the earth and what happens here,
Yeah.
and she finds it confusing often for her
Right.
of why we continue on earth to do what is happening.
Yeah.
This lack of love on earth.
Yeah. So she has the love in the spirit world, and she can see the love in the spirit world.
Correct.
But
She
there's a
can't
bit of
see the love.
so there's a bit of emotional confusion about the earth and
Yes.
what's going on the earth
Correct.
and why it seems to be different.
Yes.
Yep.
She finds that is where she's discovering parts of God, like within the laws. We're taught simplistically the laws,
Yep.
and then you have an opportunity to actually understand the behind what is in the law, so to speak.
So a lot of the people here on earth wouldn't understand that a lot of the truths they've been presented with are not truths that you're often presented with in the spirit world until your development is quite advanced.
Well, in the spirit world, you generally don't want to know.
Because you're reflecting your real feelings rather than
Yeah.
just what your thoughts are.
And especially in the lower spheres, most in the lower spheres have this belief of injustice of how could this be happening to them? What did they do wrong to be in the place that they are?
Yeah.
And most aren't open to hearing that.
Yeah. So when did you end up, I suppose we're now mid-1800s, there's quite a bit of time between mid-1800s and 2000 from our perspective at least, here on Earth. So what happened during that time? You had quite rapid progress. When did you actually become at one with God? When did you make this, when did you enter the gate of heaven?
That one was about 1926.
1926. So now it was so you'd progressed from this time from the third dimension to the eighth in a space of around about another 100 years. Is that correct?
So what happens is, by spending the time in the third sphere and going back to the first sphere regularly, And opening up to those emotions that I had, it meant I was able then to progress very quickly
Yep. In comparison to before.
to before.
Yep. So in 1926, when you entered the celestial heavens, what did you feel at that time? I know it's very difficult to describe it, but
The first feeling that I had was that I was finally home.
right. Yep.
I had finally come home.
Yep. And you were welcomed by many spirits, yeah? Like everyone is. How did you find that transition? How did your spirit friends help you make that transition over that gossamer bridge, so we call it, into the heavens? Like,
you have to go from trusting yourself and being responsible for yourself just to allowing God into your heart. And the moment you allow God into your heart, you're no longer having to do it yourself. And this was the big block that I had to getting through the bridge. Allowing myself to open up to the fact that I don't have to be doing it. Because I could love and I could share. But then when you're opening up purely to God, it's very different.
Yeah. So from that point in time, in the mid 1920s, 1926. What have you been mostly involved in doing since then?
Well, in 1926, it was a very tragic time on Earth. It was a very busy time on Earth. So from 1926 to 1946, I had a desire to help many people that were involved in the wars on Earth. And that took many different forms.
Yeah.
So some of them, we probably should go back a little bit. So when you arrive in the spirit world, within the first few moments of arriving in the spirit world, God gives you an opportunity. You have another chance to decide or change or feel open to other possibilities. So when many of these men especially arrived in the spirit world, they were given an opportunity to be shown another way that they could be engaged in the spirit world.
So you mean the men who were involved in wars?
Correct.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And so most chose not to,
Right.
but many also did.
Yep. So you would have enjoyed that process of being able to help them and educate them.
Correct.
Yep. And
Because many of them were boys too.
yeah, of course, just under 20, many. Yeah. So after the war ended, obviously there were less people now passing into the spirit world than before. What did you choose to do then?
Then I went on a discovery for myself.
Right. Yep.
And that was when I really wanted to understand God's universe as a complete.
Yep. Yep. So when you made the transition, when did you actually make the transition between the 14th and the 15th sphere?
That was in 1986.
Right. And what was the major change in your being when you made that transition?
It was my desire to want to know more.
Yeah.
And so where I was, by opening up to this desire, it allowed me into another sphere of discovery.
Yeah. And in that case, a lot of new things were added to you.
It was like you talk about your computers, going from a slow computer to the fastest computer ever. Each time you go up to a sphere. So my discovery was the turning point.
Yeah. Yeah. So how long now? So you've been in the 15th dimension for now since
Since 1986 to now, I've been going between the 15th and the 13th.
Yeah. Yep. And when did you decide you wanted to be Peter's guide? What happened for you to be Peter's guide? Because that was obviously an assignment of some kind.
Yes. With Peter's guide, there's much confusion around how guides work.
Mm-hmm.
So many of you in the audience think that if I'm Peter's guide, I'm constantly
With Peter.
beside Peter.
Yeah.
And I'm here all the time.
Yeah.
It's not like that.
No, when you're in the 15th dimension, you can share yourself amongst lots of people simultaneously.
Correct.
Yep.
Yes. So the main time I came to Peter was 3 years ago,
Yep.
when you arrived on the scene.
Yeah.
So it was that time that Peter had a desire to want to discover more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's when he was assigned my soul.
And obviously there are personality similarities between yourself and Peter. So
Yes.
what are those?
The discovery is the main one,
The desire to discover new things.
yes. And when I was on earth, I had many desires as far as with land and sea
Yeah.
and understanding,
Yeah.
very similar there. And also, Peter has a discovery or desire to want to know people.
Yeah.
And now I get great enjoyment out of just knowing people.
Yeah.
You, as many of you in the audience, you see all your hardships as that's who you are, whereas we get to see you as you really are.
Far removed from that person that often people believe themselves to be.
Correct.
Yeah. Yep. So, so when did we first meet, you and I?
When did you and I first meet? It's probably more the other way. When did I first meet you? That was about 14 years ago. Yes. And I met you through another celestial who took me to meet you.
Before that time, did you realise that there was any of the 14 who had returned to Earth?
In 1930,
Mm-hmm.
it was then that we were becoming made aware that it was a possibility that this might happen.
Yes. So you were aware that it could happen.
It could happen.
Yep. And when did you find out that it had happened?
Well, when the 14 years ago, that was the first time I had seen it for myself.
Right. Yep. Gotcha.
I
Right.
saw you for myself.
Yeah.
And your lady.
And the lady. And the others too. Yep. Okay, so shall we just hand some questions out to the audience again? And Matthew, thank you.
G'day. Yeah, I've just got a couple of questions, Angelo. The first one is for me, and I probably feel like a lot of people who are following the teachings as Jesus and Mary are giving them, that receiving God's truth is probably associated with a lot of pain. Would you mind describing a little bit of the process of longing for and receiving God's truth when you no longer have any pain? Like what that's like in the celestial kingdom?
Well, that word pain is a bit like the word death.
Yeah.
See, if you just went with desire, the pain, you're never going to have too much pain. Do you understand that?
No.
If you were just going with desire and love for yourself in that moment, the pain is never going to be too unbearable. Your desire and your love's always going to override the pain. Because every time you have an experience and you feel pain, it's what happens after the feeling. You know that the pain is so worth it.
Yeah.
So, no, if you can no longer see it as pain, the word pain, it's hard. It's going to be hard. It's going to be work. I'm going to have to fight it. The truth is, if you're feeling your emotion, there's no hardness to it. You're simply in that state, rather than being up here. Is that any help?
Yeah, a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of times, Matthew, we see pain as the more important thing, and what we do there is we forget the benefits of the release of the pain. So after a while, you start seeing pain not as an impediment to your growth. You actually see pain as a welcome part of the process of your growth?
You know, as you're feeling the pain, that you're getting closer to your desire.
The question was about what it's like, though, to receive truth without, because it's true that as we're led by desire, we feel our pain as a matter of course, but it's still pain, isn't it? So I was interested in Matthew's question, which was, what is the experience like once you have no more injury in you to receive more? Because obviously now you're receiving more of God's truth, aren't you, as you progress?
I'm a bit confused.
Peter's confused about the question.
Yeah.
But Angelo's not.
No.
Because, I'm getting really confused.
Yeah. So if I can just help Peter with the question. What Angelo was saying earlier was that the main impediment to a person's growth before they enter the condition of at-one-ment with God is that they believe pain to be something that's real and tangible. They believe that pain is the reason why they can't grow. But that's not the reason why they can't grow. The reason why they can't grow is because of their focus on pain. They are focused on pain. They feel pain is more important than the benefits that come after you release it. And because they have the wrong focus on pain, before the eighth dimension, people are constantly focused on the pain that they're in rather than on the pleasure that they have of releasing the pain. Does that make sense? So why Angelo brought up the pain issue is that before the eighth dimension, you are too focused on pain still. Your pain is like, it becomes a major part of your growth because you want to focus on it. You want to say how bad it is that you're experiencing this emotion. Whereas after a while you make a transition into seeing that it's fantastic to experience every emotion. And it actually feels a welcome relief to experience every emotion, even though there is some emotional pain in the process. It's actually a very, very welcome relief to experience the emotion.
And in the spirit world, you know that if you choose not to feel the pain, instantly you've been taken out of that sphere.
Yeah. Down to a lower sphere.
And often you might go from the fourth sphere back to the first sphere. You don't always go back to the third sphere. Do you understand?
So you instantly receive the negative feedback associated with your resistance to pain. Yep.
Correct.
Yep. Now, once you enter the at-one-ment condition, what does it feel like then? And that's what Mary was asking. When there's obviously no more pain, so what does it feel like
The
then?
feeling is that you're continuing to grow and expand.
Mm-hmm.
So every time you're connecting to God, there's this feeling of growing within your soul and understanding more of what's actually happening. So in the lower spheres, you do not have the understanding of what's happening as it's going on. Whereas in my state now, you actually have the knowledge of knowing what's happening in that moment.
So there's almost anticipatory excitement with
Correct.
every single thing you receive.
Yes. Whereas when I was in the lower spheres, I was simply taken and put there, not knowing in the moment why this was taking place.
Yeah. And not realising that it was because your soul's resistance to the pain that was causing you to go back each time.
Yes. And for myself, it was generally around 2 or 3 very specific emotions.
So what were those emotions, Angela?
Well, the first one was obviously the
women.
The women.
Yep.
Yes. And then the second one was the lack of love I had for my father.
Right. So it was more like a resentment of your father, wasn't it?
Well, yes, I never saw my father as a father.
Yep.
So I resented the fact that I felt my childhood had been taken away from me.
Yep. And the third issue that you mentioned?
The third one was the love of myself.
Yep.
I was happy to punish myself rather than feel love.
Right. So sort of self-punishment, you resorted to self-punishment.
Correct.
Yep. Yep. Very common issues for many of us, isn't there? Does that answer the first question?
Yeah, absolutely.
What about the second?
The second, I was just wondering, how many people are now in the celestial kingdoms?
So, firstly, I'd like to ask your reasoning for that question.
I say there's probably going to be an emotion under there. I heard Jesus say at one point that there's now 40 billion souls, or more than 40 billion souls alive, and I guess I'm just kind of like wondering, well, you know, what proportion of those people are in the hells? What proportion of those people are in the spirit world?
Angela asked you why you want to ask that question.
See, the reason you're wanting to ask that question is you don't trust God and the fact that God can look after everybody. See, if there was no one in the celestials, God can still look after everybody. Do you understand that?
But
So we're simply connected to helping you all as a messenger from God. But God can do that regardless of whether we are in the celestials or not.
why is it though that there's all these people on the earth now that have the desire for, this was coming up for me earlier, like have the desire for the truth and the willingness and the humbleness, but they're not receiving the truth yet?
Because for many on earth, they don't want the truth around God. And they find it easier initially to talk to someone like myself rather than simply connect to God.
Yeah, I can't agree with your question at all, Matthew. You're basically saying that people on earth have a desire to receive truth, but they're not receiving it. And that's a physical impossibility. If a person has a true desire to actually receive truth, they will always receive it.
Okay.
So this is so the question is based on an illusion that you have that there is a pure desire in many people and yet they're not receiving truth.
Okay. I think I heard you say something about it, but I must have really misunderstood what you were saying at the time.
The reality is that every single person who has a pure desire to receive truth receives the exact truth that they desire.
Like straight away.
Immediately.
Yep.
Right? And if we don't, then the desire is not pure. And the issue that many on the earth who believe they're following the teachings of truth are that they are actually not following the teachings of truth. This is why they are not progressing. Does that make sense? There's this. Everyone on earth wants to believe in the illusion of progress. This is a main problem we have. We want to see ourselves as progressing, when the reality is we're not many times progressing. And the main reason why we're not is not because of anything external to ourselves. Unfortunately on earth, we all want it to be something external to ourselves. That's the reason why. So we say to God basically, I've got a good desire, why aren't I getting what I want? You know? And the reality is God's going back to us, well, I'm sorry, if you had a pure desire, you would already be receiving what you want. So that tells me that you don't have a pure desire. Does that make sense? That's what God is saying to us back. Basically, you do not have a pure desire, because if you did, you would already be receiving what you want. And this is very important to understand. If we're not receiving what we believe we have a longing for the truth, and yet we're not receiving the truth, then it means we don't have a longing for the truth. We just believe we do. And that's a big difference to actually having one. Do you see the difference?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Angelo.
We want God to take the pain away.
Oftentimes.
Yes.
Yep. So we want to experience less pain. Why? You're going to have the pain you've got inside of you and release it. You're going to have to experience it. So a lot of times what we want God to do is help us have less pain. But God says, no, I want you to feel the pain that's already inside of you, because nobody else can. So already we're out of harmony with the truth. So this is the problem that we have on earth. We are often out of harmony with the truth of how to grow. We just believe, we have a concept of belief in our mind, but we're yet to understand in our heart how to actually do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And for yourself, Matthew, you still believe that God can't do everything.
So God can give you all the truth you want, but you have to be in a place where you're wanting it in a pure sense. The instant you are, you'll get it. That applies to every single one of us, immaterial of who we are.
That's the law of desire.
Yeah. Desire.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to take a break.
Going to take a break? Yep. You're getting a bit of a headache, Pete?
No, I'm just getting tired.
Yeah, no worries. So Pete's struggling now, so we'll have to just take a break for a minute for Pete and have a drink if we can. I need to go to the toilet.
Me too.
And Mary does too. So what we might do is just have a 5-minute break where we go to the toilet, and then we'll introduce 2 more spirits to you, Timothy and Rachel. Does that sound all right? Good.